Good morning. Let's hear some energy from the few who are here. Good morning. Great, fantastic. It's lovely to be here. I'm here after a year's break at KLF, but I'm extremely thrilled to share the stage with a dear friend, Kurrien, who is someone I look up to, who has revolutionized fashion in India. He's the editor of GQ, and very, very happy to have you here with us, Che. Also, Mr. Venu, we all know about Mintra. He is the man who's heading Mintra today, and very, very lucky to have you with us and to have this conversation, Venu. I'm going to open the session by asking Venu, you, how is it to be here today?
Morning, everyone, and thanks for that introduction, Vivek. Absolutely delighted to be here for more reasons than one. Calicut's or Calicut is very dear to my heart because I actually studied in Calicut at the Regional Engineering College, not far from here, and spent four of the most the years which influenced me a lot. And I say that was the years where I moved from being a boy to a man. So it's it's a place very close to my heart. Absolutely delighted to be here, and just the scale of what KLF does, I think it's absolutely fantastic. So absolutely great.
What about you, Che? It's a tad bit of a homecoming. I think you're coming back to this side of the country after a while.
Yeah,
What's the story?
yeah, no, this is actually my first time in Calicut. My grandparents from both sides moved from Kottayam to Bombay. Must have been in the 1930s. Both my parents were born there, and so was I. So it's always great to come back to Kerala. I've never been to Calicut, as I mentioned. I've always been intrigued, just because it has this amazing reputation as a place which, of course, Vasco da Gama landed, the center of the spice trade, the pepper trade, uh, maritime routes going to Arabia and beyond, and obviously the best food in Kerala, which means the best food in India. So great to be here.
Yeah, I know it's quite interesting because I think we have actually three Malayalis on stage who are
Not from
yeah
here.
away from home and doing fabulous things. And my story is also pretty much similar, where I had to really convince my parents to allow me to do fashion, and now I'm away from home in Chennai doing what I'm doing, but trying to put the south of India on the fashion map. So it's quite interesting to have this interesting panel. Uh, Speaking of which, I would love to throw this open to you, Che, as in, what do you think is the evolution of fashion that the way that you see it in our country, and ever since that you've been in the business?
So obviously, it's just extraordinary the kind of change that's happened. I joined the business in 2008, so around 17 or 18 years. And when I started, especially with men's fashion, it was considered to be something very niche. Men were not supposed to be dressing well. If you dressed well, you were considered to be like a dandy or queer or something weird. And we had to kind of break that, and that was a very difficult time because there was so much of cultural bias against fashion, against menswear, against people who worked in the industry, frankly. And so to see where it has come today is just astonishing. It's a complete revolution. We rode all the trends in visual imagery and social media, which has democratized fashion, made it far more relevant. And now people look at fashion as a extension of themselves, as a piece of their individual style. So to see that has been amazing, and I've been very privileged to be part of that journey, to write about it and report upon it too.
What about you, Venu, as in?
Uh, I've spent a lot more years than Shay in the industry. I started in '94 when I think the industry didn't even have the word fashion. And I remember it was called ready-made garment business. I think that's what it used to be called because it had just moved to people wearing stitched clothes, from buying fabric and stitching for themselves. So from then to now, I think the change has been absolutely phenomenal. Retail as an industry has come up, and it's fascinating to see the changes from where people became comfortable to go into a shop and buy something which is already stitched to now wanting the latest. And as Jay said, it's completely democratized. Today, what's in trend in a New York or London or Milan is what people are wearing here, wanting here. But not just that, also the evolution of a number of brands which are catering to that demand, and homegrown brands, Indian brands, and I think labels becoming brands. And those are, I think, some of the fascinating changes that's been happening in the industry as we go along.
Yeah, actually, going with what you're saying, the Vivek Karunakaran brand is 18 years old, and I have seen a huge shift in the thought process of a customer from where we started to where we are today. I think you see that customers are very particular about what they want. I think bespoke is a big thing, which never used to be a thing some time back. As in, bespoke at that point was going to your, tailor and asking them to do something for you. But now I think you have people who are coming exactly knowing what they want with Pinterest mood boards. They're taking care of themselves, so they want everything fitted. So it's very interesting to see the shift, in how the consumer behavior has changed. Um, Speaking of which, as in what always intrigued me was, you know, how the role of celebrities in what we do, right? And there can't be a better person than Che to start this off. Since you work a lot with celebrities, I'd love for you to share, some insights into your experiences, what you've done with them, the relationship, all of that.
Yeah, so we've worked with practically every celebrity, and it's always an interesting journey. I always recall we shot Virat Kohli in 2011 for a cover before he was Virat Kohli. He was kind of pudgy on his cheeks. He was still eating chole bhatura and all of that in those days. Um, but the reason we shot him is because even then you could see that he had a kind of sense of style, whereas the earlier templates of Indian cricketers, was someone like a Sachin Tendulkar, who obviously, we all adore, but he just didn't have that aspect to him. Uh, it's not like in the past people had been not been stylish like the Nawab of Pataudi and that type, but that was a completely different generation, a completely different time and status group. So Virat, in a way, kind of represented a kind of a new India almost. He was very unabashed about his love for fashion, even then. And of course, if you look at his own personal evolution as a style icon, it's pretty amazing, like just to see how he's owned it. And as a result of which, he has made so much of money through endorsements. So fashion has paid. And all the people who didn't have that fashion connect have just kind of lost out on that opportunity because of their mindset. Another person who I would talk about is Ranveer Singh, who is another person who very, very quickly understood the power of visual imagery and about fashion and being a chameleon and playing around with it. And just look at, and being a creator, if you think about it, that's what Ranveer actually is. At his heart, he is a content creator, and he leveraged his love for fashion to create these amazing moments, an amazing personal brand, and look at how he has kind of monetized it just for himself, completely independent of his movies and that career. So it's like it's fueled so much in terms of one's livelihood, one's success, and one's star power.
What about you, Venu? I'm sure you have
I mean, I'll talk about this from a slightly different angle as a business and as a brand, as a retailer.
just
The
about all the money you've paid them.
Yeah, I mean, how do you make the brand and bring the brand awareness using celebrity? And I think it's a known fact, obviously, celebrities work, but at the same time, making sure two aspects. I mean, first, and I've worked with international brands. My longest part of my career was with Marks and Spencer, and getting Marks and Spencer relevant to the country. Firstly, to get a global brand to understand the importance of Indian celebrities, because for a brand it is finally global and they don't necessarily understand or appreciate the fact that you need Indian celebrities to make a brand relevant in the country. And I mean, we all know that there are only two religions in India, one's cricket and one's Bollywood. And firstly, to get an international brand to understand Bollywood, now it's easier, whereas 10 years back, they didn't even understand that part. And then to get the right fit, where a celebrity is not associated with any other brand, which in itself can be quite a challenge. But then what it does is it almost acts as a catalyst for the brand to become so much more popular. And over a period of time, and if I talk about at Myntra, Mango is a brand that we are exclusive franchisees for. And in the last 2 years, we have had Kiara Advani as the face of the brand. Nautica is another brand, and we use Ayushman. And the recognition that the brand gets because of the association with celebrity. And a global brand becomes seen as acceptable. Whereas without a Indian celebrity, many a times it doesn't get that relevance. And I think that's very, very important.
I'm going to spill the bean here and share my thoughts because, as an individual, right, I've never felt that it has to be a celebrity that needs to make a brand. But I think I'm learning it the hard way. In today's day and age, there's no other way. So you could have a great product. Your storytelling can be fantastic. But I think it, unfortunately, or fortunately for the celebrity, I think it only gets complete when that cocktail of celebrity comes in. Because, when you need to do an event, a show, or anything, when you want to promote the brand, I think the first question is who's endorsing the brand, right? So I wish that changes. I wish, I think there is a better way that we could work around that. What are your thoughts, Shay?
Yeah,
Because
I
you
think.
work very closely with them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, all our covers are with celebrities.
Yeah.
So if you want to think about it that way, everything we do leads with celebrity for the very reason that Venu described, which is it kind of is a catalyst to kind of or a gateway into what your other offering is. And for a fashion magazine, for a lifestyle magazine to present people in a new and unique way, celebrities allow that kind of storytelling to exist. So they're also a technique or a tool that you can use to further your larger interest. But to your point, Vivek, perhaps the right approach or the right way of thinking about it is who is the celebrity that fits my brand? And it doesn't necessarily need to be the biggest celebrity. It doesn't need to be somebody who's necessarily trending at that particular moment in time. But who is aesthetically most compatible to my brand? So you are able to then bring them aboard as partners because they, and by partners, I don't mean business partners, I'm talking about creative partners, because they would be able to kind of also share a similar aesthetic or worldview because they would have understood your brand. So I think kind of identifying who those possible people are who would have synergies. And today there are all types of celebrities. It's or people who have influence. It's not necessarily just the movies, and so you can carve out your own so-called celebrity strategy.
Yeah. And I think speaking of partnership, what I think would also evolve from it is that the celebrity also understands that it's time for them to start their own label. Speaking of which, I'd love to ask you, I think there are a couple of brands that you work with which are very closely associated with celebrities and what they own.
Yeah, so at Myntra we've got two brands which are more popular than the others. HRX, which started a few years back in the athleisure space. I mean, it's a sportswear brand which has evolved into an athleisure brand. It's obviously a brand from Hrithik Roshan, and we associated with Hrithik Roshan and created the brand. Today, it's I would say it's probably the largest Indian athleisure brand, and it's in competition with the global brands like a Nike and Adidas. But what it has done is it's democratized sportswear to the mass market in the country. The other brand which we are also very proud of is House of Patodi, where it's a brand from Saif Ali Khan. And Saif is extremely passionate, unlike Hrithik, where he's much more his. And I think if you think of these brands, House of Patodi is elegant, ethnic, and at an elevated. It's an Indian, almost premium luxury brand, whereas HRX is a mass brand. And it's going back to that earlier point about associating the brand with the celebrity and how that plays in. But I think celebrities, and in both these cases it was Bollywood actors, but there are number of other celebrities, whether it is cricket stars, whether it is some of the other sports people now evolving and exhibiting their own fashion, and that's something which I think is becoming more and more important.
And I think their involvement in a certain way accelerates the growth of the brand, right? So, like, would you like to share some thoughts on, let's say, for example, a brand like Snitch? They've kind of grown exponentially, right?
Yeah,
What has been their journey and
I think it's an interesting one, and you talk about Snitch, and there are a number of other D2C brands. And if I take a step back, number of, especially post COVID, D2C or direct to consumer, online only brands was an absolute revolution. And the number of brands that they came up is huge. But as time evolves, it also, firstly, to move from a label to a brand, it's important there is a physical manifestation of the brand. And a number of brands, whether you look at Snitch, whether you look at New Me, and and even our own HRX and House of Patodi, etc., where we've now moved to also having physical stores. And in the physical store, you are able to bring alive that association with the brand. Like House of Patodi, very well represented, very well manifested by having Saif Ali Khan in the videos, in the pictures, and that's what brings it to life. And people seeing it in a real form in the store, in parallel to seeing it on the web, on the platform, is I think what evolves and makes the brand grow much bigger.
I just wanted to kind of add there that there is also a risk working with celebrities and brands, because you can have any controversial moment today on social media. It's happened. It's happened to the biggest, some of the most hot global brands. I would argue perhaps Balenciaga was nearly $1 billion. It had, like, it was called out on social media for some merchandise that was inappropriate, and you've seen that brand sales just tank. So, on the business side, when you're forecasting growing these businesses, Kanye West is another great example. He was the hottest designer for Adidas, Yeezys. We know all about that. And then suddenly, some inappropriate comments that he made, he kind of was cancelled, and the brand was left with millions and millions of dollars worth of inventory which they couldn't move, and they didn't know what to do. So there is always a risk in this day and age with associating with a celebrity, because it could go from 100 to 0 like this. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on like how you think about those things.
I think it's and in today's day and world with social media, what a celebrity does or doesn't do becomes so, it's a talking point at all the time. And there, you can't be careful enough when you are signing up a celebrity, because it's important to be clear what the celebrity is associated with, what their views are, and also, contractually almost putting in as to what they can and cannot do. Because otherwise, as a business, you're risking, you're buying inventory, you're buying stock, you're betting on the individual. And if they take one wrong step, make one wrong move, you could be left with millions and millions of unsold inventory. Like Adidas had to write off literally hundreds of millions because of what Kanye West did. And that's a huge risk when you sign up with a celebrity. And it's become, I think it's grown hundredfold that risk in today's age.
And you had also mentioned about beauty, talking about Charlotte Tilbury as a different approach. So what
I think that's a very, again, something which has started in the more recent times, because of the power of social media, because of the fact that today you get visibility and you don't necessarily need to be a celebrity to start. And Charlotte Tilbury is a good brand, who's a beautician, who's a stylist, who created her own brand. And today it's a multi-billion-dollar brand in a very, very short space of time, as to how quickly the brand has evolved. And today the play of influencers, I think, is something which is very interesting. And again, if I talk of Myntra, on Myntra, we've started something called Glam Clan. And
What was that again?
It's called Glam Clan.
Okay.
And with Glam Clan, what it does is allows our customers to become influencers on their own. So if you bought something on Myntra, you could effectively shoot yourself, talk about the product, and post on Glam Clan. And if anybody else were to buy based on seeing what you've said, it gives them an opportunity to also earn something on their own. Plus, obviously, gets a much wider audience, and that's almost creating or giving the opportunity for our customer to become a influencer.
It's fantastic. I think that's such a great idea. And, like something when you were speaking to us about celebrities and I wanted to ask you, tell us a little bit about, if you were to put a name to this, let's say a celebrity who has perhaps redefined the way we look at masculinity in this world of fashion, which has kind of evolved in the last many years, and your thought process and your outlook on redefining masculinity.
Yeah, I mean, in India, we've already talked about Virat Kohli, we've already talked about Ranveer Singh, and I think they did a great job up until this point. And I would be interested to see who are the next people who are kind of taking that forward. Um, I would say globally right now, someone like Timothy Chalamet is kind of redefining what is masculinity. He wears a very small Cartier watch, almost like a women's watch, like maybe 36 millimeter watch. He will wear almost like a small purse, a Chanel purse or a Birkin purse. And he's not an alpha type of guy, but yet he seems to have a really interesting career, and he's right on the top. So in a way, I would say Timothy kind of reflects what new masculinity is. It's a kind of softer man, a slightly more sensitive man, perhaps a slightly less toxic man, and that is one kind of interesting template that is kind of being developed, I would say, globally, where you don't just have to be this kind of a prototype. In India, there are people like, I would say, someone like a Babel Khan is quite interesting to us right now. He wears a lot of jewelry. He has a lot of personal style. And he's a kind of an independent voice. People like that are also coming to the fore and redefining themselves. I think Ayushmann Khurrana is extremely stylish, naturally stylish, maybe because he's from Chandigarh. I don't know. But that's also someone we kind of work with a lot.
And since I've been both, a to be grateful, and also I've been privileged to be on the best dressed list. I want you to tell me how do you think that I'm redefining masculinity? Because you see, I'm wearing a palazzo, right? As in, people look at it and say, "What is it that you're wearing?" And I tell them it's a palazzo. It's very Japanese in how it looks, but it's the most comfortable thing ever, right? So I want to know what you think.
I love it. I love what you've done. And what I love, apart from obviously the tailoring and the fit, which is amazing, and the voluminous pants, which are totally on trend, by the way, is that you have kind of defined this as an individual. You have not looked to any trend report or any kind of, which is what we used to do in the past. We used to create, after the fashion shows, we used to do a trend report of like the 8 or 10 different trends of the upcoming season. This is how you should do it. Very directional. I think we don't live in that age anymore. Now, what GQ does, and what I think all fashion titles should do, is basically create a mood board through our content. It's a thought starter. It's just a entryway, and it's up to the individual to kind of take what they want, because today we are living in the era of individual style. Yeah, now not everybody is comfortable enough to do that yet, and certainly if you're an earlier generation, you're not. But we see the way people kind of, somebody came and asked you in front of me, about your pants. So, like, people are interested in individuality, and expressing themselves through fashion, which was not the case before. They didn't have the ideas and they didn't have the tools, and now they do because of brands like Myntra.
So I want to ask this to you. I'm going to throw this to you, Venu. Are you going to be able to sell something like this on Myntra? And what is the story that you would put out there?
So I think it's interesting, and carrying on from what Shay said, I think today fashion is very individualistic. and the influences are multiple. I mean, earlier you would look at the fashion, the catwalks that happen in London, in Paris, or New York, and pretty much from there you'd say, okay, for the next 3 months or next 6 months, these are the trends. Is what, and while those are important, I think there are multiple other influences that come in, and because of that, today no brand can rest on making something for the next 3 months and then sit on it. You have to have new fashion every week almost. I mean, at Mintra today, what we do, we've launched Forward, which is an app in app pretty much. It's a store on the app. And we launch hundreds of styles every week pretty much. So customers, and especially for the Gen Z, for the young, they are looking for something new every week. The number of, and I think that's what's changed also. The number of times people buy, from being something that you buy. I mean, clothes were something you bought for festivals, and that's probably how gifting has started in the first place. But now it's not anymore that you buy only on occasion. You buy at a whim, you buy at an impulse. So you need the customer to give a reason to buy, and that's what you are able to do. But at the same time, what it also does, it creates different segments and different positionings. And there is a place for, if I could call it, people, the discerning customer who wants great quality, who wants to look stylish, who wants to look classic, and does not necessarily want a brand name behind it, because there's a customer who thinks or believes he himself is the brand and is willing to go with uh, quality and style rather than purely what a brand says. So I think it's created and widened the market as a whole. And I think that's what the culture of today, that's what media is doing, and that's what the whole availability of fashion is doing.
I'll just add to what Venu has said. Another key thought that we see, or a trend, is the return to Indianness. So you can have it playing out in a house of Pataudi, but I would argue that some of the motifs that you have are kind of putting forward your own roots, either from Trivandrum or from Chennai, or a made in Chennai brand, and very proud of that, and very proud of your heritage, very proud of your, the legacy of, the roots. And now, earlier, while we were kind of apologetic about it, now we see a celebration of that Indianness, and I think that's a great thing because we have a lot to offer.
Absolutely. I think there is nothing more beautiful than wearing it on your sleeve. And I think whether it's age, wisdom, or the journey that you've had, it's just so beautiful when you're able to go back to your roots and celebrate it and unapologetically do that. And I think that is what also the world is looking forward to celebrate along with you, because I think there's a beautiful story to it. Um, we've been working very closely with two crafts, which is Kalamkari and Kanjivaram. And we've been doing some fantastic work trying to reimagine the textile and create very fashion forward products. And when we take our brand to different stages across the world, and when we do pop ups across the country and the world, I think you see the inquisitiveness and the interest towards that particular craft or the textile that you've been able to reimagine, but to represent it in a very, very global and contemporary manner. And I think that is the way forward for the brand.
So, 2 points. One is, I just spoke with Dhruv Kapoor, who's one of the leading kind of Indian designers today, young designer. I think he's done around 10 years or 12 years of his brand. He's been showing at Milan Fashion Week for the past 5 years or so, and has really kind of broken out into like, he merchandises in over like 300 stores across the world, and he is he's very global. There's nothing really desi about his product line, but you can see this from this season, because the market was demanding it globally. All the stores that he retails from, all the boutiques, the slight Indian touches that have now been introduced into his this latest collection that was debuted in Milan exactly a week ago. So that's kind of happening, which is very interesting. And also, I speak to like, the Collective is a big retailer in India of super high end luxury products, luxury fashion. Their top selling brand is a Italian brand called Etro, and Etro is known for its paisley print. which is essentially an Indian print. So it's like Etro is making these prints and it's appealing to the Indian customer who's buying an Italian brand with Indian prints in India. So that's also very interesting, how that's, and nobody has told the Indian customer about Etro. They just find a natural inclination to that brand. It's not such a well-known brand.
And I think just to add to that, when what we do with a number of the brands that we work with, we encourage the brands now to have Indian associations. And I mean, the most recent example, H&M associating with Anamika Khanna, and it was a global association they had. And on Myntra, literally, the whole collection got sold out within an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the power of a global brand associating with an Indian celebrity or an Indian stylist in this case, and that's something which I think is becoming bigger and bigger because people want that Indianness, but and when it's associated with a global brand, I think it becomes even more powerful. And at the same time, I think it also giving an opportunity for Indian designers to become celebrities on their own. And I think Vivek, you probably seen that happen much more in the recent past.
Yeah, I think that my perspective about that is I feel that the journey that the designer has in India is hugely determined by the geographic positioning of the brand. Because I feel, if I can be as honest and blatant, anywhere a designer is placed where there is an infrastructure, there is a lot that's going on with fashion around them, it helps elevate their, speed to which growth is ratio vis-a-vis, let's say, if I can speak about my own brand, which is based out of Chennai, which is south of India, it is a challenge because what we should forget and also remember at the same time is when we take our brand to a national platform, no one cares about where you're coming from. It is only the product that needs to do the talking, right? So I think the challenges that a brand faces, let's say, when you are not within the scope of, a lot of work relevant to fashion happening, it can get a little challenging. That is when I think we need to work more towards creating an identity, storytelling, as in you need to hustle up with a lot of other things that you need to do to make up for it. And then that if the end result of that is being a celebrity, so be it.
And I think someone like Sabyasachi, who in fact is celebrating he's doing a 25th anniversary show this evening in Mumbai, which I will be attending, is a great example of somebody who's been able to create this unique universe, and kind of have a global ambition. He's now retailing in the top department stores in the West. Certainly in America, he has a flagship boutique in New York. He's very very. He's developed his jewelry line, his beauty line. So you can see how he's systematically doing that. And I would say, if along the way he becomes or has become a celebrity, I think more power to that.
I want to, maybe wind down the session by asking you something very close to my heart. We spoke about a lot of very interesting people, celebrities, designers. You represent, one of the biggest forces of fashion in the country, GQ. So do you, Myntra, the power to influence the millions. As two superpowers that I'm sharing this stage with, what do you think that you could do to foster talent that comes just with only talent, not a name behind them, not who they know, but just talent, right? How can let's say a brand like GQ, Condé Nast, or Myntra be able to support them so that you're able to elevate, give them the platform to be one of these big brands?
Yeah, I mean, we constantly support emerging designers. We're always looking out for it. We're always looking for anybody who has a spark. And frankly, there's never been a more exciting time. Just remember, we also need to fill our pages, fill our feeds, fill our events and showcase the right talent. That is important. So you have to have that basic level of skill and competence. If it just feels like hype, obviously, we can tell the difference. But whether it's in the fashion industry, and I would argue in terms of the movies, we have always supported very, very upcoming actors, people who have done a really small role but have made a mark, have kind of stolen a scene. Those people are equally part of our ecosystem, because the ecosystem has to be nourished. Otherwise, it can be very stagnated and very stagnant, and it could be like, controlled by a kind of a very small coterie, and who don't let people in, frankly. It's in their interest not to. But as we see with fashion and the democratization of retail, we see so many interesting new voices coming in. And as media, as fashion media, it's our responsibility to project and spotlight that, and we do.
I think at Mintra, we have what we call as the Mintra Accelerator program, and that's targeted precisely at young fashion or young entrepreneurs coming up with brands of their own. And we partner with them, we help them in terms of giving them visibility on the platform, giving them support financially where required to be able to evolve. And then, of course, it's left to the goodness of the brand to evolve itself. But what we are doing is literally giving them that platform to become visible and reach millions. And it is million. I mean, like on Mintra, we get 70 million users on a monthly basis. I mean, that's 7 crore people come to the come to the platform. Almost 5 million or 50 lakh people come to us almost every day. There are people who literally use Mintra as the Instagram. So every day morning they are logging in. And that's the platform which is available. Now, to be able to get that visibility on that platform and us supporting these new brands, because also what we are trying to do is to give the customer a choice. It's not the same thing which is available everywhere else. And I think that's the way we are helping and supporting new brands, new designers, new houses to come in and become big on their own.
I just wanted to kind of close with the bit about craft, because we've not talked about that. Because we are also living in a fast fashion age. We see the rise of companies like Shein, obviously about Zara, etc., etc. But Vivek, since your brand is kind of a slower process, I think there is also space for that. And so, can you tell us a little bit about your process and the kind of customer that appeals that is appeals to you?
No, I think I believe in the idea of slow luxury. I believe that given the time that you invest into understanding the roots, translate it into craft in a very meaningful way, which has a very beautiful story to say, and if it an amalgamation of that on a great quality product is what I call a slow luxury. And today, I think that I would want a customer to invest in slow luxury only because of how fast fashion is working in the global perspective, and also because I think it is in a certain way what we put our step towards creating timeless pieces. I have customers coming back to us with pieces that we have handcrafted for them 10 years ago. It looks as beautiful as it was made, and also because they've taken good care of it. And it just fills your heart to see that, right? And it is so even more beautiful when you're able to pass that on to someone in the family because it's as beautiful and they wanted to keep it. So I feel that craft, which is used intelligently and innovatively with a story to say, is the direction that I feel for my own brand and for anyone else to follow.
And Vivek, for you, are I mean the whole evolution of weddings, is that something which is making or changing the way fashion's looked at?
So, I was just sharing this story with Che, and I'm happy to share it here as well. When COVID happened, right, um, everything came to a standstill. There were brands, billion-dollar brands that had closed down, and small and medium both. we were one of which where we had to wind down. And I would say that we only survived COVID because of the wedding business in our country, right? And I was this designer who said that I'm never going to do weddings because that's not my cup of tea. I had to sell my heart to the devil and do that because that was the way forward, and that is how India works. Weddings is big in the country, and I think it is a huge revenue, generator for a lot of us, relevant to the entertainment and the fashion industry. So I think it has a big role to play. Thank you for everyone who got married.
But and also I think just to add to that, what we and our own research from weddings was a one day, one event affair. Today, for retailers like us, it gives us one wedding, gives us the opportunity to sell 8 different outfits to one person because of the number of events that there are at weddings and themes within the weddings, and that's expanding as well. So, and I mean, earlier we were having a chat, and for the man, it was always a suit and a tie when he was getting married. I mean, that's changed completely. Today, it's almost uncommon to find somebody attending their reception in a suit and a tie because it's just evolved. But also the number of different events for the wedding, and I think that gives us so much more opportunity to make ourselves feel good by dressing up, and I think that's what also is evolving fashion.
I'm going to wind down the session by saying, go home, get married, get your family to get married because, we love for you to get married and make us rich. Thank you so much for all of you by being here today. Thank you, Che,
So,
for being here today. Thank
excuse
you,
me,
Venu.
sir. Now the session is open for the audience to ask questions. If anyone have any questions to raise, please. Thank you, sir.
This can be a comment or a question to any one of you. During your discussion, the early part you referred that, you have to be very careful about, endorsing a celebrity because something negative comes, the whole sales can be down. I'll tell you some examples because I was thinking the other way. That's this question. Recently you might have heard about, Bobby Chemmanu and one celebrity actress, what has happened, and ultimately he went to jail for some time. And it was in the social media, in the paper, very negative comments. But what was happened is that, both of these people, their endorsements, and yesterday I was saying that Bobby Chemmanu, it was full, that place. And, all these things, dances and everything outside. This is one thing. So what I felt is that, both their endorsements and advertisement and, social media, those all went up. Number two, if you remember George Michael, when you were there, I was there, very, very, very lewd kind of something. He was caught in London and his career growth was almost down during that time. And after this, it went up like anything. He became, and so many music came, his endorsement went up. And if you know what exactly he has done theoretically, that, people will be worried. So I just want to have your comments on this. I was always thought that, anything, whether negative or positive, it is good for advertisement.
So it's true that controversy sells, and that is what people have looked at. But you're also not factoring in, at least in the West, the idea of wokeism, which was a very, very big moment until right now. Obviously, Trump has a different point of view on it. But this was the kind of the cultural landscape that was there on social media, especially with fashion media and people buying fashion. So when Kanye West made a anti-Semitic remark, that was a non-negotiable, so, there was a huge backlash to that. Or when I think Balenciaga had a children's kind of a toy with some sort of sexual connotation, that was obviously something which, there was a huge backlash about that. So people's attitude to how they view these things, I would say, has also changed. In the past, you're right, controversy always did sell. I think it continues to. But now the consumer is very opinionated also in terms of what products they want to be associated with.
Sir, this is to Mitra. Sir, you mentioned about the concept of consumer as an influencer. My question is regarding what about the gamut of entire history of advertisement says that a single photograph in Life magazine of Marilyn Monroe caught hold of the whole miniskirt industry. It boosted multifold, exponentially in the 1960s. Sir, likewise, any Indian adults or icons are there who boost sales for your Mitra. Any such icons, celebrities.
Sorry, I didn't get the second part of it.
Sir, any celebrities like Marilyn Monroe's old photograph made the total miniskirt industry worldwide. Likewise, any Indian Bollywood icon who boosted your sale.
I think there are hundreds of such examples because today, I mean, Bollywood has always sold and will continue to because the celebrity culture is there within our country, and that's something which always helps. I mean, I talked about HRX earlier, and that association with Hrithik Roshan created a brand out of nothing for us, and that's been extremely successful and continues to grow.
Okay.
So,
Sir, this is to Kurrien. You mentioned that 2 decades ago, menswear got only a niche market. What about today?
I think Venu has said that. I mean, HRX is a male brand. Virat Kohli has his own brand. Vivek does a lot of menswear. So it's a very large tent now. There are foreign brands, there are Indian brands, there are platforms like Myntra which are creating their own brands. There are local designers who are very, very adept to understanding culture and providing a certain type of audience their products. So the ecosystem has suddenly become very vibrant. It's earlier there was just perhaps like a Raymond type of a template. I'm just saying, like that was it. Or you were talking about, ready-made clothes even earlier. That was it. But now there's such a range.
I'm going to give you the award for the most attentive listener today.
Hi, morning. So my question is that we all know because of the social media influence, we're well aware of brands like Gucci, Balenciaga, Off-White. You even mentioned an Italian brand, which is a very niche Italian brand, but they're using Indian prints and selling worldwide. Us as well as Indians, we know about Sabyasachi. Sabya is a worldwide name now. So goes for Manish Malhotra. Now we know Amit Agarwal, Beyonce is wearing him. Manish Arora, Katy Perry wore him. But we also have Chanderi, we have Khadi, we have our own handloom, which is not, we only are not accepting it or like highlighting them. But do you think, because I also know of brands like Pink City Prints, I think, which is a brand that sells, which has a store in the UK in London, Saks Fifth Avenue, but they are producing their garments in Jaipur and they're as Jaipur as they can get. But they do not have an Indian seller base as much. So do you think that is the right way, or is there time that yes, small Indian designers are going to be known worldwide? Would there be a time like that if that is we start accepting them like we know Sabya or Manish for that matter?
I'll just say something and then maybe Vivek, you can speak to this too. I think this is the great time for anybody or any Indian designer who has a unique voice, because now you don't have to go via the gateway cities in the past like Mumbai or Delhi. Like Jaipur is a great example because in a way it's the center of Indian luxury, always has been. They can now, and they do, communicate directly to the world. They don't need to go via anybody else because of technology, communication, etc. There is a brand called Harago from Jaipur, which is, as you know, like it's seen on like some top celebrities in the world. We had never even heard of it. It emerged globally. So, that is one very interesting phenomenon that I'm seeing more and more of, and I think there will be more. And the second thing is you have to also look back at a brand like Anoki.
Yes.
Yeah. you know, like started by Faith and John Singh maybe like 30 years ago. A brand like Ritu Kumar, who basically saved in many ways the traditional Indian prints,
Right.
blocks, all of that. It was all about to die, you know, with technology in those days. They managed to hold on to it. And, you know, so if you look at that journey, I would say still continues, you know.
And I think, I mean, at Mintra again, I'll talk of what we do. We've got our own brand called Tavi, and Tavi, and you can look it up in your app, celebrates Indian art, Indian craftsmanship from different parts of the country, and the whole brand has been created only on that, and it is only to promote that. And we do that because I think there is an acceptance of it. The customer today is looking for going back to the traditional roots. So I completely agree with Shay. I think this is probably the best time for Indian craftsmen to come back up.
I think that stands answered. Yeah.
Thank you.
Could someone give the microphone? The last question, perhaps. Yeah.
So in fashion, if now you had to pinpoint, say, one specific field where you see you should be in as a fashion designer, what would that be? Like you said, you endorse slow fashion. There are people who still like fast fashion. There's going to be consumers for everything, but one niche field that you think could be the future of fashion.
I would say, I'm happy to say that there is no one field. There are multiple areas that you can be. And I think that's the beauty of the day and age that we live in, because there is a space for everyone. It's about the niche that you want to find for yourself. So I would not want to name one particular, because there are so many different evolving trends.
One area I see an opportunity is in streetwear, and I'll just describe what I mean by that. So, streetwear obviously has become a huge global phenomenon, but the roots of Western streetwear is all in skateboarding culture. Brands like Supreme, brands like Palace, even the Japanese brands. So, but skateboarding is not alien, is completely alien to India. We don't even have roads to skateboard on. So I still see Indian streetwear brands kind of borrowing from those codes, but we have our own Indian street, and we have our own vitality and our own communication and our own imagery. And it would be nice to see, and like a brand like Almost Gods, which is kind of one of the hottest Indian kind of street brands. They draw from the Italian Renaissance and, you know, art and Western motifs. There's nothing particularly Indian about it. Now, I'm not talking about Tantra T-shirts. You may not remember that, or maybe you do, Venu. But, you know, which did like very kitsch Indian kind of T-shirts. But I'm saying that there's an opportunity to kind of to do something that's genuinely Indian street, which will have that connect with Indian consumers.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure chatting with both of you, and thank you all for being here today. It was wonderful to be here, and I wish you all a fabulous day. Thank you.